On February 23rd, Mars finally stations direct at 17 degrees of Cancer. Mars has been retrograde since December 6th. Does anybody remember December? That was a lifetime ago, frankly. But when Mars stationed retrograde December 6th, he was at 6 degrees of Leo. He has traveled through those initial degrees of Leo back into Cancer, and the station direct is where Mars is now treading water at 17 degrees of Cancer and listening to himself, what he's feeling, what he needs, what he's been processing. Mars is not at his best in the watery expressions of Cancer, where the energy is very inconsistent, unknown, unclear. It shifts and changes, especially based on the lunar cycle and where the moon is. And here Mars is understanding more of what he's been holding in his personal container, his personal emotional energy field. So this Mars has traveled back into the depths of himself, where perhaps he has crossed timelines. He has voyaged back into his inner child. He's getting memory recalls from when he was very young or any previous versions of himself. He is perhaps connecting with some core imprints, uncomfortable memories, emotions, anything related as well to his first experience of the family unit, his first experience of a tribe, which is the nuclear family. This Mars is in the terrain of his emotional roots and emotional foundation. Now, Cancer is the only water sign in the first 6 astrological signs, giving it significance. It's the only water sign in the terrain of self-development, personal understanding. It's the only representation of the emotional body from Aries to Virgo. So Cancer is quite personal, internal, and it relates to the parts of ourselves that we don't always perhaps connect with or understand, but we certainly feel it and we pick up on the energies. So Mars has been working through more than perhaps he ever realized. Here is a Mars that's working with what he's been holding, repressing, and even misunderstanding in himself. As he churns in these Cancer expressions, there's going to be a new level of awareness that's meant to guide him into trusting his feelings more, to trust the value of what he's feeling and picking up on, to understand that this is part of how he's made, to see this as a strength rather than a vulnerability or weakness. Mars in Cancer can be highly reactive when there has been too much defensiveness built up, when he has constructed walls of self-protection that don't truly serve him, that are perhaps connected to those previous versions of self, previous environments or experiences that perhaps were valid when he was younger. So perhaps the 8-year-old self needed an energetic barrier of self-defense in certain environments. Perhaps that was valid when you were 13 or when you were 21 or when there was something going on that was energetically big and there was a desire to protect or to keep out those big emotions or those big energies. This could certainly be the case if you were around anyone who had big emotions or they would let loose and they were very unpredictable or erratic in how they used energy, or if they attacked, if there were many experiences that you've been in or you've lived through that required you to construct those defense walls or defense mechanisms. And all of that could have been churned up. There could have been some deeper inquiries into what that was about, the foundational need. And that's one of the themes that this Mars in Cancer has been exploring, is what are my foundational needs that support me in who I am, what I feel, what is appropriate for me energetically, and what is no longer needed. Where do I not have to overprotect? Rather, I can evolve and flow and move with the energies, knowing it's not personal. The Cancer energy feels at a very personal level. It's a very highly sensitive and empathetic energy. And if there haven't been appropriate mechanisms or appropriate ways of processing that energy, then there's other habits that come in that perhaps you realize this is not needed anymore. Or maybe you realize it is needed in the right setting and in the right environments, in the right energies. This Mars in Cancer has been understanding more of what lies within him and has been guided to deeper self-understanding and self-validation of his feelings and what has been at his emotional core. It feels very vulnerable to this Mars. Feels very uncomfortable, rather not deal with it, rather not look at it, push it away. But the universe has been giving us this assignment for a purpose. And keep in mind that later in 2025 and into 2026, Jupiter is going to move through Cancer, and Jupiter is going to move through the same part of your chart and highlight what this Mars has been stirring up. And as Jupiter comes through 17 degrees of Cancer, and then the second half of Cancer, Jupiter brings in the wisdom, the growth, the understanding. Jupiter expands it and can also show you the better ways of handling perhaps any of the lower Cancer energies. So the work you're doing now pays off when Jupiter arrives at 17 degrees of Cancer and stays in the remaining degrees of Cancer. And that's where you could see more of a shift, more of a change, more of a maturity or an elevation in the Cancer expressions. So this particular Mars retrograde, even if it has been uncomfortable and stirred up things that you'd rather not understand or deal with, it's going to pay off when Jupiter enters the same territory in your chart. Now, as Mars moves ahead, Mars re-enters Leo April 18th. Mars is stronger in Leo. Now he is leaving the water. He's climbing out of the pool of Cancer, drying off in the sun of Leo, warming back up, and he's ready to take charge and move ahead with a renewed understanding of who he is and what he needs. Now, Mars is going to have a third and final opposition to Pluto at 3 degrees. This happens the end of April 25th, April 26th. We've been moving through these oppositions. And this particular opposition is a new territory for Pluto. And so there's going to be more that comes up that you have to face, deal with, and understand that's meant to take you into future versions of self, even if you are unwilling at first and resistant. That's coming up a little later. It's coming up a few months after this Mars stations direct, February 23rd. So know that this has been an emotional reprogramming. And if you've been in it and it's been intense, it will serve a purpose, and it's going to actually pay off again when Jupiter gets here in these late degrees of Cancer. But until then, I hope that this Mars stationing direct brings about new understandings of what you need, who you are, and how to fully own your emotional core, your emotional body. Keep in mind, this also connects to your family, children, parents, being a parent, those you live with. It connects to your sense of home safety and where you go at the end of the day to take a break. So there's, as always in astrology, a lot of themes connected to each astrology sign, but I focus on the personal spiritual development that we're moving through. And I hope this helps you understand maybe some cycles you've been in that Mars is asking you to complete and finalize for your best and highest good going forward. I will be back with more videos. Of course, another video discussing this Mars-Pluto opposition coming up the end of April. But I hope this gives you comfort that the energy shifts February 23rd through the end of February into March as this Mars gains traction and now moves ahead after his deep discovery process.